It was just one of those things where you never know the path their life is going to take you. So I started traveling across the states, started building some momentum at that point in time, and I would go picking along the way. So as I was out and about doing these things, I was like, man, I should start filming this. I mean, how interesting it'd be about a pro wrestler traveling the country.
Hey guys, welcome back to the 1,000 Card Project. My name is Ron McKeefery, and I am excited about this episode. Rod from Picking and Punching Cards. Rod's involved in a lot of things. He's got Picking and Punching Cards. He's got No Bangers Podcast. He's got Dibdit Cards. He's been a long time reseller and does a little bit of everything. But man, we share a lot. I was born in Philly. You're raised in Philly, I believe. We're both in the Tampa area now. Really appreciate you being on the show and coming on and joining us.
Yeah, appreciate being here, man, and having to be on your show.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I mean, you were a professional wrestler at one point as well. Like, just being raised outside Philly, coming down to Tampa, reselling, wrestling. How's that influenced your collecting?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised up in Pennsylvania. I was born actually up in by the Allentown, Lehigh Valley area, so about an hour outside Philly. I grew up, I'm actually a third generation picker. So my grandparents used to go to the flea markets, and they would go to the local garage sales, pick stuff up, sell at the flea market. And then my grandmother volunteered at our local church thrift store, so she would always find really good items. I actually get started reselling when I was as a teenager, because I would set up my sports cards at the flea market with my grandparents. And then my dad actually owned a hauling and tree service business. So we would go out, clear out houses in the States. I can't tell you how many people died that don't have next of kin. So we had a couple deals with a couple lawyers' offices where we would go in there and we would clear out houses. I learned a lot from the picking. Kind of grew up, I always tell people I'm a third generation picker because of this. And my dad used to set up at local card shows in our area. He would dabble. He had a connection where he can get some boxes from a distributor real cheap. So he would sell packs and boxes at card shows and some singles, and I would set up with him and stuff. And then, played college football D3 up in at Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania. And then I ended up transferring down to the University of South Florida. And I kind of, at that point in time, I found more interest in girls than I was with cards. So I took about a 20-year break from cards, but I always continued to resell. I've been reselling on eBay since 1999, so cards is something that I always found myself coming back to over the years. And when I moved to Florida, I decided that I didn't want to live my life with any regrets. I was working at, I've done sales for a long time. I was doing medical sales, and I worked at a surgical center for a couple of years. Throughout that time, I kept talking to people, patients on the phone, and we would have the conversations about how they couldn't pick up their grandkids because their back hurt, how they regretted not being able to follow through all these things in life, or they're in their 60s and 70s where they worked their entire life and they couldn't, they worked all these years and then they finally retired. And at that point, they couldn't even enjoy life. So I made the decision there that I never wanted to, I never want to have regrets in life. So I decided in my 30s to go to pro wrestling school. And Jay Lethal was local in the Tampa Bay area at the time. Jay Lethal was the Ring of Honor champion. Jay Lethal he's currently signed to AEW right now, which is on TBS and TNT. And I went to school there with him, trained, and then I was independent pro wrestler for several years. And, it was a lot of fun, accomplished more than what I thought I was going to. It was just one of those things where you never know the path their life is going to take you. So I started traveling across the states, started building some momentum at that point in time, and I would go picking along the way. So as I was out and about doing these things, I was like, man, I should start filming this. I mean, how interesting it'd be about a pro wrestler traveling the country, punching and picking the way across America. And I was like, oh, punching and picking way across America. Welcome to Picking and Punching. So that's kind of how I established my channels. And then I started a YouTube channel, American Picker Style, called Picking and Punching. And then over the time, I started coming across a lot of cards again, and I started getting more and more interest in cards. One of my really good friends, American Arbitrage Cards, he also did the garage sale stuff, and he was starting to get really into cards, and he had a separate card channel. And I realized when I was buying cards at garage sales and like flea markets, come across different stuff, I wanted to showcase those a lot more on my channel, but the normal viewership on there, they would tolerate some card stuff here and there, but like I couldn't go really in depth. So I decided to create a separate channel about picking a bunch of cards, and it's kind of where we are today.
That's awesome. I didn't realize you went back to pro wrestling in your 30s, which is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. It was crazy because I just started wrestling locally in Tampa Bay area. Probably about 2-3 months into my pro wrestling stuff, I I had a really good gimmick. Like if you I don't know if you're a pro wrestling fan growing up, but I used to always love like the Demolition or the Legion of Doom because they used to always have the spikes on them. So I had this like leather jacket with those spikes all over it, and then I had a custom mask creator, which kind of it was like there's a band called Slipknot, which would come out with masks all the time, and then I was a big like horror movie fan, so I had a custom mask creator create me a mask that looked like Hannibal Lecter wrapped in barbed wire. And I would come to the ring wearing this, and I had a mohawk going down, and I was a heel, I was a bad guy, and I just had I was an average wrestler. I was a good talker, and I had a great gimmick. So I always tell people is you may not remember my name, but you'll remember, man, the guy with the mohawk with the spikes on when I come to the
That's
ring. And
awesome.
over the first couple months, like I started getting a little momentum going, and people started reaching out to me, started getting booking, and I started traveling to like Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, started wrestling across there, and then one thing led to another. Like 6 months into it, I had a tryout. I flew out to California with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and which is like the WWE of Japan. So I was out there, trained out there for a week. Nothing really came of it, but it was a great experience. And then I got a call from the WWE. I did some extra work for NXT down in Orlando. I did some extra work for Ring of Honor at the time. So it was a crazy ride. The pandemic really kind of put an end to that.
Sure.
Because as I was saying, as I was in my 30s, I was building up a lot of momentum going. I actually was booked during WrestleMania weekend. So I was actually supposed to be part of WrestleMania, being extra at WrestleMania. Around WrestleMania time, it's just like the Super Bowl. They do all kind of like shows leading up to it. It's really to showcase the top like independent talent. Not saying anything that came from it, but I was booked like
Right.
three or four shows on WrestleMania weekend. And then the pandemic hit. They canceled WrestleMania in Tampa. All my shows got canceled. And then once we were able to go back wrestling at that time, it was almost like starting over. I did wrestle a little bit, but I was just dealing with a lot of nagging injuries. And at that point, it was like I had to make the tough decision where do I want to focus on my YouTube stuff because that was starting to really take off? Or do I want to beat up my body, travel, be gone for 12 hours a day on my weekends, traveling cross country to make $100 on a wrestling, independent wrestling
Right.
show, and it just wasn't worth it. So I decided to make tough decisions, step away from it. But like I said, living my life with no regrets.
Absolutely. Well, I actually have quite a few wrestling ties. Obviously Tampa is a huge wrestling community.
Yeah.
And so just being down here, coaching
Well,
at South Florida and
there's a big reason for that because one is the state income tax in Florida.
yeah.
WWF back in the day, well, actually WWE, they actually had Florida Championship Wrestling was actually one of their territories in the like early 2000s there, 2009, 2008. That's like Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, a lot of those guys got the start in there. And then they moved their training facility to Orlando, but still a lot of the wrestlers still live in this area because of Florida Championship Wrestling at the time.
Yeah, I've actually been to the training facility over in Orlando, and then just getting to know some of those guys through South Florida years. But then, when I was at Tennessee, I got connected with John Cena. He was a D3 football player as well, and so when they would come through and do shows, his buddy, who was a strength coach for the Buffalo Bills, who's a good friend of mine, connected us. And so from that point on, every time I was at a school and WWE, WWF, whatever came through, he would call me, and a bunch of the guys would come over and train, and
That's awesome.
I'd get to introduce him to the players and whatnot, which was
Well,
really cool. So,
he lives right here in Florida. He lives over in Land
he
Lakes area.
lives in
Yeah.
Lakeland or something, I think.
No,
Right?
Land Lakes.
Land Lakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah.
He actually probably lives about 15, 20 minutes away from where I'm at.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's cool, man. I want to get into the wrestling, but I want to take back a little bit further to the third generation reseller picker. I think what besides just buy low, sell high type strategy? What did you really take away from your parents, your grandparents, in how to approach this kind of reselling business, especially when it applies to cards?
Knowledge is power, 100%. Because you have to remember when I started in the 90s, I couldn't pull out a cell phone and start looking up comps. So you had to go off that. You had to study. So back in the day, I would study. The Beckett was my Bible, my card Bible. So I would literally study so when people would come up or I see stuff at sales, I could quick, reference from memory what pricing was. Knowing in reselling, you can go a foot deep and a mile long, or you can go a mile deep, a foot wide. Like it's one of those things. So you have to make that decision. So, I know enough in the resale community where I can find all the low hanging fruits and stuff. But I would tell you that where I really made my money is doing a deep dive in certain categories, and what I would do is I would do deep dive in video game category, deep dive in toy category, deep dive in sports cards, which I'm currently doing right now because the market has changed so much It's right now I'm getting force fed with a fire hose. It's one of those things where when I think I started, I'm like, oh, I'm getting this. I'm starting to learn so much. And then you just get blown away by so much you don't know. So that's the beauty about cards.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think just like everybody, right? You spend there's an ebb and flow. Like I've always collected cards in some type of way, but there's been periods of time where I've gone deeper into it and not. And then like you said, just the last, 5, 10 years, it's the knowledge is really the key. I couldn't agree with you more. You obviously, you've been intentional about combining content creation with your reselling business with cards. I'm assuming that kind of goes back to even the wrestling days of having a persona, having a brand. Talk a little bit about the importance of kind of building that kind of brand, that following, and how that's benefited your card business.
So some more of my background. So when I first moved to Florida, I transferred down to the University of South Florida. That's when I wanted to go to pro wrestling school at the time. And then I fell in love with me and my dad. One of my best memories from my dad. My dad's still alive and stuff like that was something we still do to this day. But I grew up watching a lot of boxing with him. We watched a lot of UFC. That was like our thing.
Yeah.
And when I first moved to Florida, I decided that I wanted to. I was taking full contact kickboxing up in Pennsylvania on my off season from football, and then I was starting to train jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And I was doing bar promotional work, and then one thing led to another, and then a fight company opened up in the Tampa Bay area, and called XFC. We ended up signing a deal with Mark Cuban's HDNet at the time, which is now Access TV. So I became the director of marketing. I went on tour. I dropped out of college and did that, and I was on tour there for a while. I totally forgot where I was going with it. What was the question again?
Just how
About building a brand.
persona,
Building a
the
brand.
persona and
So
building a
I would
brand.
see all these guys and these fighters that just thought they can just show up to fight all the time. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, you are your most important brand. You need something for people to remember you, because anyone can just show up stuff. And this goes for athletes too. And there's certain athletes, like look at Conor McGregor. Like, it doesn't matter if he's lost his last couple of fights, but people will pay to see him, because he's bigger than life. So my biggest thing is when I started, pro wrestling, I'm always about the characters, and WWF did a good job during the 80s and 90s about building characters. In the 90s, they had all these stupid little gimmicks, like there'll be a garbage man or a police officer, or like they had these, but you remember those characters. When I was building my YouTube channel and stuff like that, and I always wanted to make sure that you need to peel back the onion multiple layers. So my biggest thing was, picking and punching. That's very unique. So a lot of people were like, you're such a nice guy. I would get comments in there. I hate your name, get punching. Then I tell them, hey, you never forget where you came from. That's why, I have a backstory. But it separated me from the rest of the pickers out there. It separated my content because about a former pro wrestler that's doing picking right now. So the punching aspect of it. And then like when my dad would come on to the show, I would call him Papa Punchin. So I would name characters on my show. Like my wife is called Mrs. Punching, when she comes on. So I sprinkle in characters from time to time on there, which adds another layer. It's like a sitcom. You have these different things, but it makes it entertaining, because how many times have you watched a show that you love, but then, when you get to season 3, 4, you start falling off, maybe you don't watch anymore because you kind of lost interest.
Yeah,
That's always in the back of my mind with this. I actually set up my playlists on YouTube, such as like season 1, season 2, season 3, because you kind of want to separate what you're doing from other people. I think it's huge. Like, you want people to remember you. Being the whole wrestling thing, it gives me some type of persona, and it helps me. Like, for example, I was just at the National and I bought a box of 1985 tops. WWF, the original. That's a very expensive. It's like a $2,000 box. Well, Gary Vee is a huge wrestling fan, so I walked up. Me and Gary Vee were ripping packs of tops, pulling out cards. And then
awesome.
I ran across Tony Schiavone, who's the voice of WCW in the '90s. He's the voice of AEW. Me and him started ripping packs together on there. It just having that gimmick, having that, it really helps build your brand. Everything from like, you can do cards, shirts, you can do a bunch of other stuff outside that, which at the end of the day is another stream of income as well.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% with that. I mean, that's scaling, right? I think you've been able to scale not just with, your reselling channel to your card channels, but now to the No Maker podcast and, Dibdit cards. I mean, it was funny because we were driving when we were thinking about retiring and finding a place down in Florida. My wife and I drove from Alabama down to Florida. and to look at a house. And I came across the No Beggars podcast. It's one like the first episode. And, I turned it on and I don't know about you, man, but like I have a hard time. And I want to get into the live selling as well. But like I have a hard time with some of these live selling channels,
100%.
right?
Yes, yes.
And so Tim coming on and being this kind of, rambunctious guy and just kind of the banter that you guys had early on, I thought it was a breaking channel.
Nice.
And I was like, man, I don't want to listen to this. But my wife started laughing at Tim. So very rarely will she listen to something with me. And so we actually listened to the first episode together and you guys hooked me from that point on. But now it's one of the only pieces of content my wife will actually tolerate when I'm in the
That's
car,
funny. Yeah.
which is cool. But when you're scaling, you've scaled to this, obviously this podcast. How have you been able to manage all these different avenues? How have you been able to, what, kind of what percentages each? And then I know they all kind of blend into each other, but each one of those take time.
Yeah. So going back to the previous question, just to touch on that, like building a brand where I had picking and punching, then I expanded pick and punching cards because I wanted an extension of that. Then I started another YouTube channel called Flipping and Punching, which is more behind the scenes about, I put that on dormant, right? I made that channel dormant now. I stopped doing that about a month or so ago, just the fact I want to focus more on cards and other things. That was more behind the scenes, what I'm selling on eBay, because a lot of people like the treasure hunt, but they don't like the actual business side of things. So that was kind of aware. And then I was doing a Tuesday night podcast with the Nurse Flipper, and then I was doing No Bangers and I did a card. So like I was really starting to, these will kind of go together. I was really starting to spread myself thin, doing this. But I will say, it's, as you know, from the sports world, repetition is king. And the more and more you do, the faster you get, the better you get at it. You have your strengths in certain situations. So I just started out, slow and steady wins the race. I started out doing one video, but every time I put out content, I try to make it 1% better than the previous stuff I do. And you find tricks of the trade, you find what works, what doesn't work. Also, too, try not to be a perfectionist because, the 80-20 rule where I can put 80% effort in, but the last 10 to 20% is really not going to, how much of a is that going to impact my audience or make a change? I could spend an hour making little tweaks on it and you wouldn't see any difference in the video content, but I would know that. So, you kind of have an internal battle throughout that process. So I would say as of now, has gotten to the point where I just become more efficient, more effective with it, but I also truly have a passion for it. And the biggest thing I tell people is if you do not love the process, like I don't care about the trophy on my wall. I like the process of getting that trophy. And then once I get that trophy, okay, now what can I do next? So for me, it's about building something and being able to overcome the odds. Because a lot of people say, you're creating a picking channel. There's so many picking channels. There's so many card channels out there. But yeah, but there's only one me. So you have to understand how can you stand out differently than what else is out there. And that goes back to building a brand. And my trainer, Jay Lethal, would always tell me this, and this stuck in the back of my head. Well, two different things. One is Jay Lethal and advice from William Regal when I was at NXT talking to him. Jay Lethal says, if the audience is booing or cheering, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something right. But when the audience isn't talking, they're sitting at the look at the phones, then you lost them. So you always have to get someone's attention. So either a positive, negative way, you need to get their attention so they're making comments, doing stuff. And then William Regal told me, he's like, when you have an opportunity, when they give you an inch, you take a foot. You make the most of that opportunity as possible. So I approach every single piece of content, everything that I do. Like I talked about the national, like I found that box, which I was going to open up on my channel for a video about opening up wrestling cards from the 80s. But then at that point in time, I'm like, oh man, Gary V's here, Tony Shaw. Let me track them down. Let's open up. Now I'm doing content with them. That just adds another layer to the whole process. So you got to take advantage of every single opportunity that you can when they do arise. But it's tough, man. It's tough to build it out. I would say you have to be organized. You have to be disciplined. You have to have a system in place. My main source of income, a lot of people think YouTubers make a lot of money. They don't make a ton of money. Okay. I think if you look at the numbers, I think like 2% of all YouTubers are even monetized.
Right.
It's a very small percentage of that. And the people that are monetized and make a couple $100, then you have you have a very low percentage that make a couple $1,000. And the people getting the upper echelon is a micro, percentage of all of YouTube. So for me, like I would say 90% of my business comes from reselling. Maybe 10% of it, income comes from content, but I'm building that brand because it's not so much about making money off ads or sponsorship deals, so that it opens up It's the opportunities that come from it. Able to be able to, like, me and Gary V. Gary V is coming to Debit Cards in 2 weeks, and me and him are going to be doing V Friend Break.
That's
You
awesome.
know, so I'll be doing that with him.
It's not just the networking piece or the branding piece or what it might do for sales, but it's also like it's the fastest way to learn.
Correct.
I mean, to have such, to have a conversation like this, I think it's the fastest way to learn.
I agree
And
100%.
and so I want to dig into two kind of business models specifically with you that really interest me from the outside looking in. One is kind of box breaks, pack breaks, and kind of the financial model around that, but then also the live selling and kind of get into the debit cards a little bit. But take me to the box breaks. I mean, I see the wall of wax behind you.
Yeah. Back there.
Like
Yeah.
how do you make money doing that? Like what's the strategy?
So for me, content wise, I like to open up packs of cards, and I do shorts all the time with packs of cards. When I'm out garage sales or flea markets or shows, I buy boxes of cards. So that, because that was something I did with my dad growing up. So I always had a passion, and people always like, oh, well, that's like buying a lotto ticket. You're just throwing your money away, which is 100% true. People make money buying wax, open wax, but in the long run, the house is always going to win. But for me, it's more feasible for me because I'm using it as content in my channel, which my channels are monetized. So I do get paid from creating that content. So that's a little bit different than a lot of people, where I had that added benefit. So we started the No Bangers podcast because we were so tired of people and whatnot saying, "Oh, I got a banger," and it was a card in a one touch that's like a 1990. Like, literally, I was on there the one day we were starting the No Bangers podcast, and someone put up a Jerry Rice and like Joe Montana. It was like a 1990 tops card. It's like a dollar card. Put in a one touch, and they got $5 or $6. Oh, we got a banger here. I'm like, what is going on? And we just got so sick and tired of that because people called everything a banger. So we just made the joke of, let's create a podcast called a No Banger Sports Card Podcast. And Carrie from American Arbitrage Cards is actually his girlfriend came up with the name of it, which is ironic for us. And so we just started that because we are traditionally dollar box guys, value box guys. We had to go, but I'm trying to scale up. They like to stay in that certain more comfortable range. I take a lot more risk, so I'm able to scale up. So as we were doing that, we started building up, and we're building up debit cards. We wanted to incorporate breaks, but we do it in a very selective way where we have an approval process have to go through. We don't allow like mystery packs. We don't allow like any of the other repack stuff at this point. Something we may do down the line, but it'd be regulated by us. Where if I ever did a repack, I would show every single card on camera, have them sit in front of me, and then people would open up a pack, and then there'll be like a ticket or something in there for it. You know what I mean? That we just got tired of all the BS that goes around in the card industry, people getting ripped off in packs. So when it comes to doing breaks, there's two different ways you can do breaks. You can charge, I do pack breaks where I just sell per pack in a box. So let's just say a box may be, numbers 10 packs in a box, and I'll do like a non-sport box because non-sport, I will tell you this, people in non-sport cards are more just nostalgic or just want to be part of it compared to like sports cards where people want to get value out of it, where people are doing the non-sport stuff is more enjoyable for them. So just to say, if I pay $25 for a box, there's 5 packs in the box. We charge $10 a pack, go on camera, open it. So I double my money on the process. Minus fees, I'm making walk away $15-20. But it's quick, it's fast, you quick do that. With sports cards, you buy the boxes and then you can run it at an auction. I auction off my teams, and whatever they go for, people get some great deals. Then so they can get the teams they want. And then I also run like really short. I run very inexpensive breaks. Like, for example, we had Top Series 2 baseball. I would just charge $6 a team. We do randomized teams. So if $6 a team, that's $180. I bought the boxes at pre-orders. So in the sports card world, if you buy boxes at pre-order, they have a set price. All right. So you pre-order, I paid after taxes $97 a box. So it was almost doubling my money, a little bit less than double my money, about a 40% margin. And then when those boxes would get released 3 or 4 weeks later, Topps would raise the price from the $89.99 a box to now maybe $119 or $129 a box. So if you can get in early without having distribution, that's a good way to be able to get on the ground floor of things. But the problem that sucks is you still have to put that money up front to get those boxes. So
Right.
like I'm pre-ordering a case, like I pre-ordered a case of that. When I put out $1,200, that case didn't get released to me to 3 or 4 weeks later on, So,
Right.
you do type your money. So in the beginning for people doing breaks, it's very difficult because if you miss a pre-order, something sells out fast on the website, you have to go find it retail at stores. And, you have to line up at Walmart in the morning when the distribution coming or drive around town trying to find it. So it's very difficult for people to get into breaks. The people start doing braking and to make it cost efficient where you're trying to compete where it's like me and you trying to compete with a Walmart. It's very tough when people have direct distribution. So you have to find ways around it to try to, see what you could potentially do. I've been leaning more towards non-sports breaks over sports breaks because one is it's let's just say in sports cards, you have a set, let's say there's 300 cards in the set. Well, out of those 300 cards, there may be 50 stars. There may be 10 to 20 superstars in there.
Right.
Well, and you get one autograph per box, right? So it could be a crapshoot on what you potentially get. Where if I open a box of this, say, The Walking Dead, and a box of Walking Dead, well, there might be only 30 members of that cast, where 10 of those members are stars in that cast. The other are just
Right.
B-level stars. So one thing we've been seeing is we're getting bigger hits and more consistent bigger hits with non-sports stuff over sports cards, but I do both throughout the process. So
Yeah, it's
try to change it
interesting.
up.
So to kind of recap that, just to make sure I understand this correctly, I mean, like card, like pack openings is really more kind of a marketing expense for you. It's more to build the channel. You do get some monetized. You do get monetized from your videos, but that's not really maybe covering all the expenses
Yeah,
of
no. There's
pack
there's times
breaks.
I lose money to do packs breaks stuff. One is I enjoy doing it, so it's fun for me. It's no different than me going to casino and just putting out $200. I'm like, hey, that's all I can afford to lose. If I go there, okay, well, release cards. If I open a box of cards, I have a nice big hit. Helps offset my costs. I can open more. But then also too, I offset my box openings by buying like a case of cards, or I do a couple breaks. Well, maybe I break half the case. Well, that half a case pays for the other half, and now I can just open those boxes for free. So, and there's a multifacet on it.
Yeah. So the other half of that then is with the breaks on, diptych cards or whatnot or whatever, you're really shooting maybe like a 50% profit margin on that, you
Somewhere,
know?
yeah, I would say, it will vary based, especially if you're doing auctions. So sometimes you
Mhm.
might get a 20 to 30% margin. It just
Yeah.
just depends on the time. And if you sometimes you try new stuff and it maybe fall flat in your face and then, you break even. I haven't lost money in my breaks, but I've broken even a couple times too, where it's just
Yeah.
bad timing. But also too, like this, I just started doing breaks. We just launched breaks 2 or 3 months ago. So, I'm consistently doing 1 to 2 a week, and you just never know. Like I'm still learning with the whole process because like I bought UFC cards to test. I paid $2,500 for a UFC case, which I truly love. But I try to do. I had to sell the packs at $25 a pack just to to make a profit because those boxes were over $200 a piece, and you get 12 packs per box. More or less where we sold, but I just didn't have a big market for it. There's not a massive UFC collector card market on debit cards. Now I would have to go to like a whatnot or another marketplace that would have or Fanatics maybe that have a bigger UFC marketplace, but I just truly enjoy it. But also too that goes on brand because there's no one else that has the knowledge on say maybe UFC or WWE stuff on debit cards as I do. Just
Right.
growing up in those industries.
Well, you're talking a lot about dipdit and whatnot, and that was
Mhm.
kind of my second, really trying to dig into the strategy behind it. I mean, outside looking in, again, I haven't done anything from a live selling standpoint, but I do believe, I mean, you listen to Gary Vee, you listen to all these people, like live selling is probably the future, right? In some type of way.
It's not
You
probably
obviously have,
it is the future. Not to
yeah,
interrupt you, it definitely is. If you look at the numbers over in China right now, I think it's between like 50 to 7% of the entire population is involved in some type of live selling over there, where the U.S. is like 6 or 10%. The
right.
companies like QVC have invested on. That's a great podcast to listen to. Gary Vee did an interview with the CEO of QVC. I'll send it over to you. Take a listen to it. But he talks about they have 1,000 influencers they use now to do live selling, and they've completely changed the business model.
Well, I think it leads into all the things we're saying, right? Following and those types of things. But I think there's a lot of people that, obviously, maybe they don't have the following, maybe they don't have, and they're not used to being on camera and these types of things. What would be how does Whatnot, I mean, how do you make money with Whatnot or debit cards? But then how does somebody get into that space in a way that doesn't make them, because you hear so many horror stories of people trying it and they're just getting killed and then their experience is bad and they don't want to come back.
So a couple things. One is you need to treat it as owning a brick and mortar store. When I say this out loud, it makes a lot of sense to people, but people don't understand. Like just like you said, I can't tell you how many people said, "Oh, I started there. I had no one in my show. I lost money." If you open up a brick and mortar store, do you think that you're going to make money on day one? Or do you think you're going to spend money on advertising? Do you think you're going to spend money to build up your clientele? When you look at it from that standpoint, it makes more sense. But consistency is also king, because out of sight, out of mind, because there's a lot of competition on there. I started selling on Whatnot 3 or 4 years ago, doing in the garage sales category. And I would just do random items in there. I pre-list all my items. Then I went to the point where I just pulled up random as I built a following. Then I would just save time by not pre-listing my items and just putting items up. But the biggest thing, this goes for picking, this goes for sports cards, you make your money in the buy, not the sell. And a lot of people don't understand that. When I buy, and one thing I specialize is buying out collections in multiple different categories: sports cards, toys, comic books, other stuff. And I like to use the 80-20 rule. I'm going to get 80% of my money back for 20% of the items. So by making my money on the buy, I can afford to run things at $1 or $2 on there. But, when you go to live selling, you need to look at the fees that are associated with it. Like, for example, like if you come on debit cards and you put up a card for $1, you're going to get charged a 35-cent processing fee. That's any platform, Whatnot, anything else. And then if you're getting charged, say 10% on there, you sell a card. Well, you sell a card for $1, you might get back 40 cents on that, 50 cents on that, compared to that. So you have to know your buy cost. So what I always tell people starting out, don't be afraid to start your items at $2. Then it gives yourself a little, because everything sells. When the card show, you bought a giant lot of cards at, say, 100 cards at $50, your buy cost is 50 cents a card. Well, why would you go on there, start stuff at $1 and then break even on there? So start stuff off for $2. If it doesn't sell, if it does sell, you're still making a profit each cards. With live selling, it's about micro transactions compared to, the macro of it, looking at the big picture of things. Because if I can sell, and people complain all my time, oh, you're buying junk in your videos, you're buying this. I'm like, I killed on the low dollar stuff because I can move it fast. I also, because I built a brand, I also have a following now. So a lot of people can't do the same business model. Let me rephrase that. A lot of people can do the same business model I do, but a lot of people don't want to put the time in to build that up, to do that, because they just want the quick flip. As you probably know, being a coach for many, many years and the industry you work in, people are lazy and people don't want to put the work in. You come across that all the time, unfortunately. And the people that do, you see that they exceed and they are able to take stuff to next levels. The biggest thing for people here is when you do your live selling, you want to don't just bring in. Another big mistake people make is they bring I just want to list all my high dollar stuff online on eBay, and then I'm just going to bring my junk, my low dollar stuff. Well, if you bring low dollar junk to the things, people are going to want to come back. So I have a mixture when I do my shows. I mix in some low dollar stuff, I mix in some other stuff, but you work off the rule of averages. So I'm okay putting up a $20 card and getting $7 for it, because I put up 10, cards I paid 25 cents for it, and I'm getting $3 a piece. So I work on the rule of averages, where someone's getting a great deal on that card. Well, they get a great deal on that card, they're going to come back, buy more each week. And so it is a constant balance you have to do, but you have to find the median ground in there. And the biggest mistake is people don't want to put the time in. People buy too high, and then the stuff sells low. You have to remember, Whatnot, debit cards, no matter what live selling platform you go onto, it's about volume. It's about moving items fast, and expect to get anywhere from 50 to 60%, or maybe 40 to 60% of market value. But if you're buying at the right cost, you can afford those margins and be able to do that, because you're making money on the other stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing you said there that's really important is that sales velocity, right? Getting it out
Correct.
the door and being able to put that into other things. And like that's where a lot of these live sellers make their money, really, is just turning it over so fast. I think other thing that I think I've heard you guys do that I really like is that I think you've partnered with people on their first couple shows, or and leveraged kind of your audience and those types of things. And I think that's another way in for somebody that's maybe just
Well,
starting off.
And here's the difference. When you go on Whatnot is a live selling platform, and Debit Cards is a live selling platform. But Debit, if people don't know what Debit is they have stack marketplace. You can do buy it nows, or you can do auctions like eBay as live selling, just like Whatnot. But we also have a Discord, we have a Discord built into it so people can communicate with our members. And when you go live on Whatnot, you have to build a following to get people to follow you. The interesting on Debit Cards is on the District app. So with District, when you go live in the marketplace, all the people in the marketplace get a notification about that, which is nice. So if you're just starting out, you would have a better chance on, say, Debit Cards to get people in your show compared to Whatnot, we're getting people in your show to start off with. And then one of the cool things that, even though Whatnot allows you to co-stream with people, but you can only sell at one person's store. So on Debit Cards, me and you can co-stream together. It's your first time going. My audience, I'll have a big audience come in for me, And then when you put your items up for sale, they get sold from your store and my items get sold from mine. So we can go back and forth and people can just click on the little icon in the corner. It switches back to who's bigger on the screen. And then you can sell your item. You sell 2, 3 items in a row. I sell 2, 3 items in a row. And we just, we have a good time together. We're talking, joking around. But the biggest thing I will tell you about live selling is treat it. Live selling is not a reselling tool. It's a social media tool. So when you go on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, what stops you get your attention, right? Interesting, outgoing. The biggest mistake people make is they treat it like a live selling app. People don't engage with the people in the comments. There's dead air. There's people that get off camera and come back a minute later. Like I went on YouTube or Instagram, I scroll through and a video came up and you're like, hey, let me tell you about what's going on in the sports world. And then you left the camera for 20 seconds. I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to scroll by and go something else. So you have to, I would say it's 70% entertaining, 30% reselling, because how many times have you gone somewhere and you spent more money than what you wanted to because the salesman did a great job. He was entertaining. You guys joke around, you laugh because you buy from people you like. How many times have you wanted to buy something and the person was just a total jerk, or they just were very disengaged with you and you kind of like felt like you were getting pushed to the side. They just wanted to sell nothing else. And it was a turnoff. So even if it was a good deal, you decided not to buy from them because you didn't like the salesman. Same thing on live selling. So it's about the social aspect, not so much about the live selling. The live selling will come if you have an entertaining show, if you engage with your public, because, people don't realize that YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, live selling now has tore down the walls. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, you couldn't talk to your local, your favorite celebrity. You know what I mean? Like now, people, not saying I'm nowhere near saying any of us are celebrities on YouTube, so that, but it's their entertainment that we are part of their weekly lives because we have put out weekly shows. We have the same people come in and watch each week. But now they have a way to interact with me that you didn't have with, say, a Brad Pitt or someone, your favorite movie, Vin Diesel or something like that, where we have tore down that barrier of engagement, which is huge. And that's a good way for you to connect with your audience. And then in return, like the sales will come if you build that connection.
Yeah, I think, what you said there, know, like, and trust, right? I mean, you're going to buy from people you know, like, and trust. And I think, people, it's the same thing with like podcasting. I think so many people get, oh, I only got 100 views. Well, if you put 100 people in in a movie theater, you'd feel pretty good about it, right?
100%.
And I think that's exactly what you guys are doing with that. It's awesome, man. We end the show with some quick questions here. So give me one card you'd never sell.
One card I would never sell. Man, is it a card I own or is it a card I don't own?
Let's go with one you own.
My 1985 Hulk Hogan. I just bought it at the thing. It's not even an expensive card. I just love it. It's so much. It reminds me of my childhood. It's Hulk Hogan punching his fist through like one of those boom boxes from like the 80s. And he's wearing a boxing glove. It's not an expensive card, but I love that card so much I wouldn't sell it. Yeah.
What's one of the biggest flips you've made?
So right after we're around the pandemic time when all the riots were starting to happen and stuff like that, I ended up buying, someone posted on Facebook Marketplace about a huge like video game buy, and I reached out to the guy, said someone was coming. It was like 5:00 at night, and he's like, "Hey, the guy didn't show up. You need it. You have to come to my house tonight with $1,000 to buy it." So I drove like an hour away. I bought this like massive video game collection. I probably made like $20,000 worth of stuff in there. But then he called me back to come back like 2 weeks later, and I bought a 1986 Castlevania Nintendo game, brand new sealed. I paid $375 for that. It's 10 off the wall that got graded. After grading fee shipping, it came out to about $500 my investment was, and I ended up flipping that for $8,500. So yeah.
What's one lesson you wish you would have learned earlier?
Man, one lesson I wish I would have learned earlier. I would say, that's a tough one, man. I wish I would have gotten deeper in prospecting with baseball. One thing I've been learning now is baseball is king when it comes to these big shows. And there's so much money to be made in the minor leagues and prospecting. I wish I would have known that sooner, which I learned a lot of that from Tim. Tim's really big on prospecting and stuff like that. And that he makes a killing in the bargain boxes finding stuff. So having more knowledge in baseball and prospecting, that's something I've been really focusing on right now. Same thing like Gaby, which I know you talked to Gaby about how he does the same thing with college football. That's them I'm already involved in. So now I'm taking that same concept and moving over to baseball.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Let's if you were doing the 1,000 card project and you were trying to flip your way up from $1,001 cards to $1,100 cards, how would you go about doing it?
Bargain boxes. First thing I would go to bargain boxes. The biggest piece of advice I give to you is when you go to card shows, if you walk up to the table and you see a dealer that's all baseball cards on the table, he has 10 value box full of baseball. What's he going to put the most value on? Probably his baseball stuff because it's what he's most. But if I find one single box with football, wrestling cards, MMA cards, stuff he probably doesn't really care about because he has very little of that. That's where I have best deals. So what I would do is I would search through bargain boxes and value boxes, but I would find the things that dealers don't have value on. And you have to ask questions. Like, for example, hey, when you make a bundle deal, if I buy, if I'm buying that, buying bulk and buying stuff is a good way for dealers to move items, especially stuff they don't care about. Because if you think about it, if I was a dealer and I'm going my 80/20 rule, I'm making all my money off the stuff in my showcase. That's just gravy on the side, all those dollar boxes. So you can get some really good deals and find stuff that's undervalued in there. And that's a good way. If you're willing to dig, put the time in, value boxes first, find the stuff that dealers don't really care about or the things that they don't focus on.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would add to that I've seen you do, and I think you're picking and punching videos is you're not afraid that if you dig through that one box and you see 5, 10 cards that are pretty good, you'll make an offer on the whole box and
Yeah.
really buy at scale there.
Yeah.
And
Because
take
time
that
is money.
calculated risk.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm taking a calculated risk, but also time is also money. What a lot of people will go through a bargain box, and if I'm finding $5, $10 cards in there and they're only $1, like what potentially else could be in that box? So you have to remember those boxes are heavy, and dealers, a lot of dealers that go to card shows will move a lot of stuff especially the last day because they don't want to load it back and take it back home with them because they may have another 10 boxes sitting in their house or 20 boxes they want to bring for other shows. So I will make offers on things. Say, what do you want for the whole box? So best way to do it is you get a bundle. If you know they're willing to work for you for a bundle of cards and they say, hey, just curious, what would you want for the whole box? And then they just want to move stuff. So
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, that might be, that's just extra money for them. So if they can quick move something and put a new something out there, they're going to do that. But yeah.
Yeah, I've seen you take that risk several times on your channel, and it seems to always work out for you, which is pretty great.
Well, one of the best piece of advices I've ever gotten was someone once told me, how many times have you said to yourself, man, I regret not doing that? How many times have you said, I regret doing that? I will tell you, 9 out of 10 times I get back from a card show and I regret not buying that card. Very few and far between times I would say I regret making that purchase. Because one is we're scared, we don't want to take the risk. And once you get out of, they always say life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Those calculated risks are working to pay off. And I would tell you, going back to your question, one thing I wish I would have done sooner, I wish I would have took more risks sooner in my reselling career, not just with cards. Because once I started taking risks, and started making these purchases that I felt uncomfortable with is when my business really started to take off. And that's when I was really starting to scale.
Yeah, it's that glass ceiling, right? I think it's, when you're in the dollar box, it's hard to buy the $5 box cards. And then you do it a couple times, it works out for you. Then you do the $10 box cards. And it just gives you confidence each time, I think, when you do take those risks.
And a lot of people have the knowledge. A lot of people can do that. The problem is they get very comfortable because they're taking $1 and they're getting $5 or $10 from that card, or maybe $3, $4. But if they make a bad buy, it's only $1. It's offset where you make a bad buy in $10 cards. Now you're $100 out. I mean, $10 cards. So it happens. I would say in the card industry, I am one of the few people that post the good, the bad, the ugly in my channel. Because I'm getting back in the cards in the last 2 years. And I want I'm not putting my channel up for people to learn from. I want people to learn on my journey. This channel is about my journey through the process. I'm not there to try to educate people on how to do cards because there are thousands of people that know more about cards than I do and could do it 10 times better. But, when I'm going through this process, I left a Tom Brady rookie card at at a flea market in a box because on the back of it was like a mail away card, which I thought they wanted $30 for it. Come to find out that was only limited to 250. I left that behind. I put a video on YouTube where I found a $5,000 card in a flea market box and I left it behind. And man, I got lit up in the comments. But then I also have 1,000 people say, hey, you know what? My biggest mistake was this. and it just opened up. So there's a lot out there that people don't realize. And you see all these creators, and this is not me taking a shot at any creators out there, because I love everybody in our community and what they do, but it's not relatable when someone says, hey, I spent $10,000 at the card show in 4 hours. Hey, I spent $50,000 at this card show. So when I started making content, I wanted something more relatable, dollar boxes. Most people are spending between, $500 and $200 at a card show. They're not spending thousands of dollars. And so I want to go through that process, and I show you the good, I show you the mistakes I make, and I make a lot of mistakes on my channel, but you know what? It's part of my journey, part of the process. And that's how we learn. So if someone can learn from what I do and not make those same mistakes, then that's a win-win.
Yeah, well, that's just tuition for learning, right? It's when you make mistakes, it's just tuition, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Man, it's been great having you on the show. Final question here: what's next for No Bangers Podcast, Diptic Cards, and where can everybody kind of stay up with you into it?
Yeah. So for me, from my car content, you're going to start seeing me starting to expand. We talk just like this show. You're trying to level up. I'm also trying to level up. So you'll see me start opening up more higher end boxes probably on my channel, because I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to nickels and dimes make dollars, and I'm able to start moving into a little bit higher dollar stuff. I just bought a $20,000 collection on my channel, but that was because I nickel and dime for the last year. So in the future, I plan on buying more collections. That's something that I would like to do more in, and go through that whole process, because I think that people get overwhelmed in there. I like to open up more boxes and just more content that's unique and not the same that you do see. And that comes from being very creative with the whole wrestling, building your gimmick, building your brands. You'll start seeing a lot of that stuff. As for Diptic Cards, we've just hit, I think we've only been open like 6 months. We hit 2,500 users on there. It's growing every single month. I was able to make some good contacts at the national through some certain companies. Nothing's in place yet, but I'm hoping to be working with a couple of these bigger companies here in the future to help us not only get some new product for Diptic Cards, but also get some really cool things in place. And yeah, and for the No Bangers, I mean, we're just going to continue to grow it as we do. I wish we had more time to put in it, but it's just more of a passion project for us to kind of give people, let people know kind of what we're doing, kind of just for literally me and my friends just sit around talking cards anyway. So why not record it? So that's kind of what we do. If anyone wants to find me, you can find my American Picker Style channel. It's Picking and Punching on YouTube. I have Picking and Punching Cards, which is strictly card, non-sport, and sport content. A lot of sport on there. And then also, too, if you guys want to try out Dibit Cards, it's DIBDIT cards.com. If you want an alternative to like Whatnot, and that's where you can find us. So,
well, I know as somebody that listens to a lot of your content, man, I really appreciate all the work that goes into doing it and sharing it with everybody, and just really enjoyed this conversation and you coming on and spend some time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome.